Hello, welcome to Stories in Focus. My name is Ellouise Schoettler. I'm your host and a storyteller, but anybody that's been to this show knows that if I open it, we have a guest. And I've been looking forward to having Geraldine Buckley come and visit with us. Hi, Geraldine.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. It's lovely being here with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's going to be fun. We're going to talk about some stuff. She's going to tell us a story. When we have our little breakdown, and in about 15 minutes, don't go away because you'll turn your back and Geraldine will come back. So we'll have a lot of storytelling. So, how's it been? How you been?
I've been having a lovely time telling stories hither and yon and having a lovely time, yes.
Yeah. Now, you don't live down here. You live in Frederick.
I live in Frederick, so I'm based in Frederick, but I travel all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I love Frederick. I did used to live here.
I know.
But now I live in Frederick. So.
Okay, now at this moment, when I met you, you were not singularly a storyteller. You were engaged with a very big institution out in Frederick. Tell us about what you were doing.
No, in Hagerstown.
It was
in
that
Hagerstown, yes. I was the Protestant chaplain at the largest men's prison in Maryland, which is MCTC, the Maryland Correctional Training Center. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's a whole story about how I got there, but I was very surprised I became the chaplain, even though I'm ordained, and so I had all the qualifications. But I always think of myself as a free spirit, creative. I can't be bound by bars. And then the Lord
or the commandments.
Well, the commandments are a completely different thing.
Yeah.
So it was my great surprise when I ended up being the chaplain there. So you never quite know what's going to happen in life. But I did get some marvelous stories out of it.
Well, I was just getting ready to say that out of that work that you did at the prisons and wherever you have, some absolutely wonderful stories have come that you've polished, and they're there. And
yes.
They teach lessons as well as that they're for human exchange and experience.
They are, and I've had many people who have been in the audience, they've come up afterwards and they've almost been in tears saying, my grandson's imprisoned, or my son was imprisoned, or somebody who's very significant in their life. Thank you for making them human. Because so often people, they get a sentence and then everyone thinks, oh, that's the end of them. But of course it's not. There's life behind the bars. And
oh, now, Geraldine, that's very funny. There's life behind the bars.
I should
write that down quickly.
Life behind the bars. Well, I'm a writer as well.
I know.
So yes, I might definitely use that for something, life behind the bars. Yes. But there is. And so it was a privilege to get to know those men. Mm-hmm. And there's an incredible church behind the walls, 600-man church. And sometimes, seriously, the power of God was so incredible in that church that you thought that the whole roof was going to blow off. Because where there's much darkness, there's much light. But I didn't even intend to get into any of all of that.
But, I like that. And that's what I think that I really have always enjoyed by hearing your stories, from the prison experience, both the stories that you experienced and the stories that you tell about the men that were there. I think it's an example today. I was thinking about you this morning before I came over, and they were having a report on the news about the prison in Brooklyn that had no heat and no lights for almost 10 days. I think it was a week at least, maybe longer than that, and that they really were not being fully treated as human beings. And so when you tell your stories, you give us human beings in the stories.
Yes, you get the balance. You get the balance. And of course, I saw the men at their best because I was the chaplain, as I told you. And so men would come in their cleanest T-shirts. And they would, in fact, if someone was called to my office and they hadn't put in a slip to see me, they would often come in shaking because it meant that someone had died. If you got called to the chaplain's office. And so, as you know, I'm English. Mm-hmm. And the English make a fabulous cup of tea. Mm-hmm. In fact, I have a whole CD called Tea in the Slammer. Mm-hmm. And so I was allowed to bring an electric tea kettle in, and I would make different kinds of tea for the men and put lots of sugar in because that's the British cure for shock. And so I would break the news about someone's the death of someone close to them, and then I would give them tea with sugar. But what was incredible was that you can't cry in a prison if you're a man. You just can't, and yet they felt safe enough with me that they would drink this tea and they would weep. And I think they knew that because I'm not your average chaplain, as we talked about, that I would say, don't worry, I'm a wailer to them, that I'm dramatic. And they would just feel safe enough to cry, and then just pull themselves together, and just a smile that was a heart-to-heart smile, and then strengthen their shoulders and to go out with the news. And it was an incredible privilege to share people's grief with them.
One of the things that this is bringing back into my memory and making me think about the opportunities that storytellers have, like you do, to meet with so many different audiences, and that your story can change right in front of you because of their changing response to the story you're telling.
It really is true. A storytelling audience is very important, and it's a gift when somebody really listens, and of course a story can change. But one of the things I wanted to say was that it's very important to have a sense of humour. At least I believe it is, and that was one of the gifts that my wonderful mother gave me, and it comes down from the Irish genes despite this accent. And so in the prison I would make them laugh. We would laugh together, and that was a gift for all of us. And over the years, so I don't just have prison stories. As you know, I've got many, many other stories, because I have managed to stumble into inadvertent adventures throughout my life. Now, I don't know how it happened, but I've never been married and don't have children, so I've had lots of time to get into trouble. And that trouble now becomes stories. And so I'm now grateful for some of the experiences, and I've lived in different parts of the world. So I have lots of stories, as you know, that aren't anything to do with the prison. But it is a joy to be able to tell to different kinds of audiences, because even though we have different experiences, there are universal themes that we all share, like grief, as you talked about before, but also love, laughter. And I think when people hear a story, sometimes they think, oh, that happened to someone else. And it can bring healing to someone's life, or just even a mini vacation. They laugh, and their troubles just go away for that moment. They take a little vacation. Stories are terribly powerful, as we both know. And you can be telling a story and somebody is listening, they've got pictures in their mind, and they're listening to the words, but they're putting it through the filter of their own experience.
Absolutely.
And that's very, very powerful, I think.
Absolutely.
And it bonds an audience. And we both know how marvelous it is when you're on a magic carpet where you're telling a story and the story becomes bigger than you or the audience. And you are all together in a space, shared humanity, which is very powerful and very needed, especially in this divided kind of time. So humor and story, powerful combination.
Well, and the thing that I've had fun with the things that you write on Facebook, the past couple of years I've been watching, and they can be short or they can be long, and you call all of your trips an adventure.
They are adventures, yes. And even if things that seem to be bad happen, I love it.
You have a talent for that.
Yes, I do. But I'm always delighted as long as you can get a story out of it.
Yeah.
So, and I do believe that in the end, things turn out as they should. And sometimes I'm gripping onto that belief by white knuckles, going, it is going to turn out right, isn't it? Lord, there is a story. It's going to have a good ending, isn't it? Yeah. Or it's at least the ending that should be there.
Right.
So.
Right. And I think that's part of your. Storytelling is not a business. Storytelling, I think, to me is it's part of who we are.
It certainly is. And as I say, right on the first page of my website, a story is the quickest way between two hearts. Mm-hmm. And it really is. You understand someone in a completely different way when you know their story. And it can build bridges between very unlikely people.
Thank you for coming today, but don't go away. We're going to stop for just a few minutes, and then Geraldine will be back with a story.
Thank you, Ellouise.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I had something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
My mother always used to say that it doesn't matter how bad things happen in life as long as you get a good story out of it. All things work together for good. And I was hoping when I was in my early 20s and living in Austin, Texas, that that really was going to be true. You see, I was flying home to see my parents who lived in Spain. They'd moved there when I was 11. And I was going for Christmas, but I'd left booking the tickets rather late. And so I got a bottom of the barrel deal. Instead of 2 or 3 flights, I had to take 4. I was going to have to take one from Austin to Houston, Houston to New York, New York, Madrid, Madrid, Malaga. Well, the night before I was going to fly, the young man who I'd been seeing for about 8 months said, "Geraldine, may I take you out for dinner tonight?" And I said, "Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you so much." And when he arrived, he was carrying this enormous package, a really big package, beautifully wrapped with a bow on the top. And I said, "Darling, how lovely of you. Thank you so much." And he said, "Don't open it now." He said, "Let's go and have dinner and open it afterwards." And that's what we did. It was a lovely dinner. And I came back, ripped all the paper off, and there inside was an absolutely beautiful suitcase. It was top of the line. It was suede on the top, and then all the outside was a gorgeous tapestry of a fantasy scene. I loved it. I said, "This is so kind of you. It is so sweet of you. Thank you so much for giving me a goodbye present." And he said, "Geraldine, that's just what it is. It is a goodbye present. I want to end this relationship." And he left. And as I watched his tail lights going down the hill, I thought to myself, well, I hope my mother's right and I do get a good story out of this. But not long after that, I started to feel a bit queasy. I thought how very strange. I knew I liked the man, but I didn't think I liked him enough to have a physical reaction from breaking up with him. But 2 hours later, I realized that my reaction had nothing to do with the man leaving or breaking up with the man, unless it was the dinner he served me. I must have eaten a bad shrimp. I had food poisoning. And my contents of my stomach, my life, it felt, exploded out of both ends of my system. I will not be more graphic. I will leave it to your very vivid imaginations. But I was in a terrible way all night. And so as I was trying to pack this suitcase, going between the lavatory and the case on my hands and knees, I thought, no wonder he gave me a case. He wanted to make sure that there was no impediment to me leaving. Well, the flight the next day was very early. I got on it and I threw up all the way to Houston. When I got on the next flight, the lovely, absolutely lovely air hostess, she took pity on me. She realized what was happening. She moved the seats around so I was sitting on the aisle next to the lavatory. And it was a good thing she did because I wore a path in the carpet. Well, on the next flight, I had to go, as soon as I got to New York, I had to get to the international terminal. And there was a long gap between the flights, which was a good thing, because it took me so long to get to that international terminal because I had to go from restroom to restroom. And it felt as though I'd become intimately acquainted with a large amount of the porcelain in JFK. That last flight, I felt so sick. And when I arrived, I looked horrendous. I had green, seaweedy hair. That's what it felt like anyway. And it looked as though I'd put my finger in an electric socket. It looked as though it had been electrocuted. And my face was absolutely white, except I was green round the gills, and I had red, bloodshot eyes. And any veneer of being a young, successful Austin career woman was out the window. I just wanted to see my mother. I reverted to be a child. I just thought, oh, I just want to see my mama. I knew if she hugged me, everything would be all right. But all I had to do, or the only thing that was between me and my mother, was getting through customs, hitting the restroom one more time, and then getting on the next flight. And it was a very short time because the longer flight had been delayed. So I stood in the line, I stood in the queue, and the official stamped my passport, and I was just about to head off for the restroom when this man stood in front of me. He was a Guardia Civil, which is the Spanish police, and he had black shiny boots on, a green sludgy serge uniform, and he was just staring at me, and he started rattling off something in Spanish. Well, my Spanish has never been very good. In fact, it was probably best at that time than it's ever been. But even at my very best, I was like a very enthusiastic but not very intelligent, maybe 7 or 8-year-old. And so I said in my best Spanish, "Sir, please would you let me go? I need to catch my other flight, and if you don't, I'm in danger of throwing up on your boots." Clearly, what I must have said was something like, "Sir, I have drugs. Would you like to buy them?" Because the reaction was huge. He started shouting in this staccato Spanish, just yelling and pointing, and this woman appeared. Out of nowhere, it seemed, and bless her heart, she was enormous. She looked like a cross between Hulk Hogan and in drag and Attila the Hun. And she said, "You come with me. You come with me for strip search." And she took me to this little room that on the outside it had interrogation room, which was very scary. Because this was a long time ago. It was only a few years after Franco had died, and many people went into interrogation rooms and they never came out when Franco was ruling. I thought, am I ever going to see my mother? But she smiled, and I think she realized I was ill and that I wasn't carrying drugs, but she had to do her job, and bless her heart, that included checking every one of my orifices. I will not go into details, but it was really embarrassing. And of course, I missed my flight. Another one wasn't for 7 hours. And during that time, I thought, I don't care what my mother says. I don't want to get a good story out of this. I never want to think about this ever again. And I shoved the whole incident deep down into my subconscious. And that's where it stayed for about 25 years. Until I got a job as a chaplain in the largest men's prison in Maryland, the Protestant Chaplain. Now, I had volunteered for a few years before this, so I knew the men. But a few weeks after becoming the chaplain, I was sitting in my office, and there was about 4 men in there, and there was a young man completely covered in tattoos of his family, because he said that was the only way that he could keep them close to him. And he was really upset. He said, "Chaplain," he said, "you've got no idea of the indignity of what we have to go through when we see our family." And he was so upset that his throat was just pulsating, and one of those figures was almost doing a jig. He said, "You've got no idea." Now, I did know all about the squat and cough procedure. He said, but he carried on. He said, "Really, you couldn't understand, Chaplain." And out of my subconscious came these figures of the green serge uniform, the boots, and then the woman, the Attila the Hun. And I remembered the incident. And I realized that I was about to build the first of many bridges with these men through the power of story. And I said, gentlemen, don't be too quick to think that I don't understand what you're going through. Gentlemen, let me tell you a story.
Sweetheart, think about your future. Jeff over there did, and just look at him. He saved up, bought a house, he's got a beautiful wife. They even had a fancy pants destination wedding, and oh, they had a baby! Ah! Smart and handsome, ooh la la. Now, I've been saving these frames for pictures of my future grandbabies for years, and the shopping sprees on organic clothing and telephone cases is not helping you save for a family. Oh, gracious! Look at that! He's a model! Oh. I bet you he's putting all that money right into a 401k or his baby's college fund. And his teeth are so straight. See how good saving can look at feedthepig.org. Feed the pig.
Maria, so how's work?
It was fourth period biology. Our students just weren't getting how easily viruses spread. So Miss Bell and I had them role play a zombie virus outbreak. By the time they had all learned the lesson, all the living were dead. Hey, how's your job going?
That big sales meeting I planned? Next year. I might get to go.
Cool.
Aren't you glad you stayed to hear that wonderful story? See what you would have missed if you hadn't heard that. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I want to ask you another question that fits in with that story, I think. I've been admiring that jacket. The color's fabulous.
Thank you.
Where in the world did you get it?
It was my mother's. And my mother, who I loved enormously, has been dead for 22 years. And so you know how old this is. But it's been at the back of my closet. So sometimes I can wear it and sometimes I can't. All people everywhere know about the going up and the going down, of the shrinking and the expanding of the human body. But anyway, at the moment, I'm absolutely delighted that I can wear it. And in fact, I'm wearing her ring as well. So I was just terribly pleased to have these two on when I was telling a story about my mother. She had the most marvelous sense of humor and a sense of ridiculous. And she really did. She made us laugh. And I think it comes from the Irish heritage that when things are bad, if you laugh enough, things aren't so bad. Liz Carpenter, we were just talking about, who used to be press secretary, Lady Bird Johnson, the White House, that you know. I mean, I know that you know her.
Yes.
She had a wonderful sense of humour, and I once wrote a poem about her that had the line, "Things aren't so serious when you can laugh enough." And so I tell true stories that specialise in making people laugh and think.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And
And
so-
she could really do that.
Oh, she could. She had the most wonderful sense of humour, and my mother did. So Liz and I got on so well because we'd laugh together, but my mother had the most wonderful, wonderful sense of humour. So it is marvellous to be clothed in my mother and having her here while I'm telling a story about her.
Well, you know, the way I feel about those things is that's a hug.
I've never thought about it that way, and
That
it's
is a
absolutely
hug.
true. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
You know, if I'm going someplace or if I'm someplace, I have a special quilt that I take, and that's my hug.
Yeah.
My aunt made it. That's my hug. I know that I'm perfectly safe. And so I think we all relate to the presence, you know, of people that are still there in the clothes.
That's right. And of course, if we keep telling their stories, they will always
That's right.
be there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love that my family live on. In fact, one of my nieces said, she said, even after you're gone, she said, we'll just sit down the children and put in the recordings, and they can find out about their family history.
Exactly. It's wonderful, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So this is the thing that's so important, I think. I think that aspect of knowing your story, knowing you, knowing your story,
Yes.
is so important to do.
Yes.
And I'm really always happy when I see somebody doing that. Where's your next? We've got just about a minute. Where's your next landing place?
I'm on the road for 4 weeks, Florida and places in between, and then after that I'm driving to Kansas and going off to Chicago, and so lots of other places. And as you said earlier, that hopefully making many audiences laugh and think and be united.
Yeah,
Be united
yeah.
through the power of story.
Exactly. That's what
Yes,
it's all about.
it is.
And so now you know why storytellers keep sitting up here telling you the stories. It's too good for us, and we hope that it's good for you. So
Thank you.
remember, Geraldine Buckley, and she tells in the Washington, D.C. area. You can find her at different places, but it's your website.
GeraldineBuckley.com.
Yes. So you want to be sure that you're checking the website to see where she is and what she's doing. Thank you, Geraldine.
Thank you so much. This has been great fun. Thank you, Ellouise.
Okay. Take care. Come back. We'll have somebody else to talk to you next week.